guys, so in this video we're going to go over a new build that I've been playing recently. Sort of a meme build, you could say, but yeah, it ended up working out pretty good, I think. Yeah, we're using pretty much just Boneshatter on a mace, and it might sound kind of crazy like Boneshatter on a mace, and yeah, we're actually using Boneshatter as our main damage skill, and also it's our clear skill. It's also our mobility skill, because you can see if you do get enough attack speed on Boneshatter, then it actually ends up moving around pretty quickly, right? So kind of similar to the Tempest Flurry, that monks and gemlings are kind of doing the stat stacking, but I do think actually Boneshatter is a lot faster, right? You can see, I guess there is sort of a difference in the amount of dex I have in attack speed, but yeah. Anyway, so that's that. And using the maces from the Expedition boss, the Olrovasara boss. Okay, so about the weapon, there's only really two things you need to know. And that first thing is that when you hit an enemy, you gain the added lightning damage. It doesn't have to be a hit with the weapon, right? So we can hit with anything. I could put in like ball lightning, and I could shoot ball lightning out, hit like 100 times, and get max stacks on this weapon, right? So at one point I was actually running ball lightning and cast on shock to try to get these maximum amount of stacks and that kind of stuff, but was a little bit too mana hungry, and basically don't really even need that many. Like with I think 4.2 attacks per second, you're gonna be pretty much capped in 6 seconds. So that's might be a little bit long, but there is other ways you can generate extra hits. I don't think when you dual wield, because Boneshatter will actually hit 2 times, I don't think that counts. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It's kind of hard to test, but yeah, I'm not really sure about that. But there is other things like you can do the bell, and you can add extra hits from other sources, right? You can put like a level 2 spark or level 1 spark in a cast on shock, and that that's not going to cost that much mana, and then that will just kind of shoot around and give you extra stacks and that kind of stuff. But overall, I think it's not really all that necessary. And as you can see, we'll go kill a T4 Xesht and don't really even need all these additional hits and that kind of stuff, I think. Okay, second thing is that I guess all this damage is also going to be added to your heralds too, so that makes your heralds pretty powerful with all this added lightning damage we're getting. Also, the one downside is that it gets added maximum lightning damage. So that means you're low, like when you're doing Herald of Thunder with cold infusion, the low end of your cold damage is going to be really low. And since you can't really get lucky cold damage, sometimes I guess when you have bad stats or like lower end gear, you don't really have a lot of damage, the freezing on Herald Thunder can be kind of inconsistent, right? So that's kind of two things about the mace. But yeah, let's go jump into a breach map and check it out in action. All right, so we talk about the build a little bit, and a couple of like downsides to this build, I guess, is you are kind of getting stuck on a lot of things with Boneshatter. You see, like right here, pretty easy to just like get stuck on almost anything, right? It's kind of annoying. I was talking to one of my friends who was playing the Tempest Flurry version. He said it's the same there too, so I guess it's just a problem in general with these kind of skills. But you can see clear pretty fast, especially now that I've added blink into the actual like weapon 1 set. It really makes the clear, or like going through maps and that kind of stuff, a lot smoother, because if you do get stuck, then all you have to do is just kind of blink, right? I apologize for the kind of low FPS. I don't know, something's weird after the last patch. But anyways, yeah, clear pretty good. Let's go find the breach. Oh yeah, mana costs are also pretty crazy on this build. Like I would actually ideally want to run like a level 40 Boneshatter, because that's like 3 times more, basically like roughly 3 times more damage effectiveness, but it's like almost impossible because it's going to end up costing like 800 mana per second or more, which is kind of crazy, right? So anyway, let's open the breach up, and this build actually, like normal clear in maps is like okay, kind of not like anything too special, but in breaches, when there's a lot of monsters, then this thing is just going crazy, right? Because the heralds are, whenever they hit something, then you get added lightning damage from the maces, right? And that gets added to the heralds, and then the heralds do like tons of damage. And I've gotten some pretty insane screen explosions. We are pretty mobile too, I guess, right? So Yeah, breaches are pretty fun on this build. Man, getting stuck everywhere. Alright, but that is sort of like what it's like. Alright, let's run a Breachstone. I think this will be pretty quick. It's like a T4 Xesht. And yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the single target setup, right? So basically, Boneshatter on its own is like okay damage, but, and I was trying some stuff with the, what do you call it? Earlier on, I was trying the big like mace thing. I forgot what it's called, right? But like the one that drops from the sky, or and that one, it was kind of like underwhelming, right? A lot of the times, the bosses just kind of moved out of the way, and it didn't really even do that much damage, I think. So what I'm doing now is I might try the mace thing later on again, because I tried it when I was like having like pretty bad gear, but I'm just basically just using the what do you call it, the bell, right? We're just using the monk bell because I don't know, it seems to add quite a bit of damage, and I can add like rage on hit and that kind of stuff, so it actually ends up boosting our damage up like quite a bit. So it is kind of like maybe an annoying single target swap, but I think this is only really needed for T4 bosses. For anything under that, you can just go and bone shatter them, and you pretty much kill everything that way. But for these kind of harder bosses, you do need a little bit of investment, I think. And what we're doing on the second skill set, we'll go over this later on, later after all this, but investing a lot into shock again, right? So I have a curse setup, an exposure setup. So we're pretty much reducing the resistances to 75. It's kind of like a good benchmark, I think, to have. So reduce the resistances by 75%. And then after that, we have a lot of shock effect. I'm at like 80%, I think, increased shock effect. Okay, so let's go and kill the boss. Hopefully, he doesn't give us too much trouble. But yeah, let's see how it goes. Oh, I'm supposed to avoid that. Okay, and I forgot to push the bell, which is kind of annoying. But you can see we are chunking him down like quite a bit, right? And I think he's dead, yeah. Could have probably done a better job, I think. It kind of mess up the rotation. Can be a little bit tricky, right? You have to do like the mace thing and then hit the bell, and then make sure you're pushing like Unbound Avatar and that kind of stuff. But anyways, yeah, damage pretty good, I'd say, for like this meme kind of build, right? All right, so let's go over the build. I think we start off with the gear. So maces, right now I'm using ones that are maximum roll with 30% attack speed. That's probably the most important stat on the item. We want to get very high attack speed. And for the soul cores, I decided to go for the increased elemental damage with attacks. At least with 2 rune sockets, this option is going to be more damage than adding in the attack speed cores. And you know, getting a lot of attack speed might seem real fun at first, but the faster you're attacking, the more mana you're draining, and then mana becomes a bigger problem and that kind of stuff. So actually, in the end of the day, the increased elemental damage with attacks is better because we have 2 of these, so it's 120% increased elemental damage with attacks, which is pretty big. Okay, so for the other gear right now, I'm just using energy shield gear here with resistances because, you know, we do need a lot of resistances, and then intelligence or dex. Don't really have intelligence on my helmet yet. Need to get that soon. For the body armor, using the Warrior Invictus to get some attributes and global defenses. Not really sure about which secondary stat would be good. If you get resistances here, that means you can get more attributes on your gear and that kind of stuff. But you do want to get at least like 250 energy shield and a decent amount of evasion, because we do need to get spirit from this lead me through grace, right? You can see I would actually like to have 3 more spirit, because then I could run the clarity aura. But anyway, so do need a decent amount of spirit, and I've socketed in the maximum, increased armor and energy shield and invasion in here. So that's the body armor. For the amulet, basically just getting attributes on the amulet. You do actually need strength because we need like 205 strength for Boneshatter. And then right now allocating insightfulness because I thought this would be good, but actually it turns out that the spaghettification is actually a bigger damage increase than insightfulness, but insightfulness does give me some nice things like increased energy shield and mana regen. So overall I think this node is pretty nice. But I think if you had to choose for annoyance, there's a couple of ones I would recommend. First of all, Deep Trance. Before I was actually pathing all the way down here to get this, but then I got it on a Megalomaniac, right? So I have Deep Trance and Sharpened Claw. I mean, it's not really all that ideal, but it's one of these, you know, just 25% increased attack damage, so that's pretty good, right? So have that here, but before I had that, I was actually just pathing all the way down here and grabbing this. But you could also anoint this on your amulet. I don't think it's that expensive. It might actually be better when you're, you know, to fix mana issues. Okay, so rings. These are the rings I was using on my Witch Hunter crossbow build. Same rings. It's kind of nice. I can just use them everywhere. It's just basically elemental resistances and then lightning, flat added lightning. This one's actually a lot better. It's got Dex, Int, increased lightning damage, and flat lightning damage. Boots, you know, just energy shields, and Int, and then resistances, and then belt. We want the Ingenuity belt, and then for the gloves, using the Hand of Wisdom in action, obviously, right? Okay, so basically to solve mana problems, I've started using the Melting Mana Storm because on bosses, the normal mana flask is just so bad, right? And I don't want to have to invest in mana flask. That's kind of cringe. So just going for the ultimate mana flask, right? Because that fixes all of our problems. And that's pretty much the gear. Life flask not necessary. I'm using a thawing charm, but I don't really think I've ever gotten frozen because this build's just so fast that you know, if you take a look at my stats, I'm at like only 4k evasion. We have 4.5k ES, so about like, you know, 9,000 ES with Grim Feast. But I'm not even running acrobatics, right? It's like, don't even need acrobatics, right? Because we're just so fast and everything dies in one hit and then everything around us blows up. And T4 bosses die fast enough, I would say, that I don't even think I'm going to even try to get acrobatics because I don't think this build can even run acrobatics, right? Because we're not going to be able to get enough evasion. You could run Wind Dancer and yeah, sure. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really think it is even needed, right? Just a little bit of evasion to avoid those multi-projectiles and that kind of stuff and everything, you know, and then just have energy shield to enough to take like one big hit and you should be fine because we can blink around and dodge stuff. And so far this has been working out pretty good. Okay, so let's go over the skills real quick. So this kind of stuff might change, guys. And I'll have a Mobalitics link and also a PoB you can check out, and I'll be updating the PoB in the Mobalitics page because I don't have to go and change the, you know, the video description like 100 times. So keep everything nice and simple in the Mobalitics page so you can go check there out for updates and that kind of stuff. Okay, so first of all, let's just go from the top. So we have Unbound Avatar and just putting in some skill effect duration and +1 fire. And then for Boneshatter, so we're using the Lightning Infusion, Primal Armament, Martial Tempo, Inspiration, and Execute. So this last one is sort of like optional, right? You can do whatever you want. You do kind of need to be mindful of the cost multiplier. My Boneshatter right now 48 mana, and even at 48 mana it is pretty expensive. So at some point I was using like close combat, wanted to use close combat, but close combat was just way too much mana, I think. I can't find it, but anyways, yeah, if you do have, you know, if your mana sustain is better, I would recommend putting in close combat over here instead of execute. Right, so also with Boneshatter it says like 120k tooltip, but this is actually ×2, so it's actually 242k tooltip because we're hitting twice, right? So it might seem like you're doing more damage when you only have one equipped, but when you do have two equipped, it's actually hitting 2 times, so you just times this number. We'll go into the actual damage in PoB later on, but it's like 1.3 million full DPS, pretty much. Okay, so Herald setup. This is your standard Herald setup, I guess. So we have the Cold Infusion on Herald of Thunder, and then we have the Ice Bite on Herald of Thunder, and we also have the more Freeze build-up from Glaciation, and then just Lightning Mastery. Herald of Ice, kind of the same thing, but I don't need to add Lightning Infusion here because we already have more than enough flat added Lightning for Herald of Ice to shock. So we got Innervate, and then we have Magnified Effect, +1 cold, and then just Long Shot because so when it clears further away, it does a little bit more damage. And then for Tempest Flurry, so one thing I noticed is that my mana cost when I'm swapping over to my Bell setup is pretty high, and I'm using Tempest Flurry to basically to shock and apply exposure. Right, and when this shocks, it's also going to be triggering my Cast on Shock setup, which applies the mark and my curse. So this Tempest Flurry is actually doing quite a lot of things for me. So it's shocking, and then applying my Cast on Shock, and then the exposure. But I'm not sure if I actually need this high level of a gem. So I'm using a level 19 gem. And maybe I can try to drop the levels down to reduce the mana cost. So it's going to make, everything feel like quite a bit better, I think. But I'll have to test out what kind of, if I can still even shock bosses with like a level 5 or level 3 Tempest Flurry, right? I'm not really even sure if you can, but if you can, then probably swap, like lower the gem level, because that's going to make the mana situation quite a bit better. For the Tempest Bell right now, I'm just using Rage Forged, and then Concentrated Effect, plus Combat and Rage on the Bell. And we just have some auras. We have Grim Feast. Oh, I didn't even have Grim Feast on, I think. Oh, did I? Oh, okay. We'll go over the aura setups now, I guess. So for the auras, we have a couple of setups. So on Weapon Swap 1, I'm running Grim Feast. Then I'm running both my Heralds. And then I'm running Berserk. And then I'm running Blink. And then on my second weapon swap for the, I'm actually just using a pillar over here as my leveling staff. I should probably get a better staff with like attack speed or, I don't know, something else on it. But maybe some like Fizz and then Fizz Leech or what, I don't know. We'll have to kind of find a better staff for this guy. But right now just using the leveling staff. And so we have Cast on Shock, Berserk, Blink. I guess we could turn off Berserk. Oh, we also have Herald Thunder. But yeah, that's pretty much all you need. Yeah, so that's the weapon set things. You have to sort of check them, uncheck weapon set 1 for Cast on Shock. Otherwise, you're not going to have enough spirit to reserve everything. And so Berserk is giving us 58% increased rage effect, but you do lose 0.1% of life per rage when you're not losing rage. So when we're gaining rage, we're going to be losing life. But for some reason, this is working with CI, and we actually don't even lose life. But it might be bugged because sometimes I've just gotten one-shotted like out of nowhere, and my life goes down to 0, but my energy shield and my Grim Feast is all still active, right? So kind of weird. So I'm pretty sure it's Berserk that's doing that, and this whole thing might be just bugged altogether, and you're not supposed to be able to use it with CI. So if that's the case, we can drop Berserk and instead run Wind Dancer or something else. Okay, and then for the Cast on Shock setup, we're just running a Voltaic Mark. I have a low level Mark because I don't really need the damage from the Mark. I'm just going to be using the, increased effective shock. And we got Focused Curse with Conductivity and the Heightened Curse. And on Blink, I'm running Second Wind and Ingenuity. So that is the gems. Let's go over the passive tree, because in PoB, actually, I don't know like how you can do it, but it's kind of hard to set up the weapon swaps. Okay, so as for the tree, it's sort of your standard stat stacking tree where we come down over here to get this kind of stuff and then go all the way up here and grab a little bit more stats and some lightning damage nodes. And let's go over the jewels that I'm using. We'll start down over here. So I'm using a Against the Darkness. Now best in slot would be the gain as extra lightning and %int, but I didn't really want to buy that yet because I wasn't even sure this build was going to be good or not. So I just bought a cheap one with the gain damages extra lightning. That's probably the most valuable stat on the item. And so yeah, we get quite a lot here. We get like 4% extra here, 4 extra here, 4 extra here. And when I do level up, we'll be able to pick up this node here for some extra lightning damage too. So it's pretty nice. And yeah, I have some of my jewels are these sapphire jewels with basically just increased energy shield and increased elemental damage, and then some stats or resistances like this. Basically the same thing here. And one of these sapphire jewels needs to have the mana on kill, right? Or you could run two, preferably, right? And then I'm running a couple of these what do you call it? Ruby jewels with attack damage, increased melee damage, or increased there's increased attack damage, increased melee damage, or increased elemental damage. I think you can get on these rubies. But yeah, oh yeah, elemental damage. So there's 3 prefix attacks you can get. So you can get up to like 30% attack damage from one of these and rage on hit. So we get one here and one here. So we're getting 2 rage on hit when the bell is inactive. When our bell is active, we're getting 5 rage per hit. So it's pretty much always going to be max rage. Okay, so that is that. And then I'm also using a Megalomaniac to get some extra like high value nodes. Pretty much that I wanted to get Deep Trance because it has a reduced cost of skills pretty much. That's like the only reason why we're actually taking this. I guess the attack speed is nice as well, but mana is a big problem. And then I'm using a Heroic Tragedy with Verana so we can get the Circular Teachings, because we do need quite a bit of strength, right? We need about 205 or 6 strength, I think, for Boneshatter level 20. So might as well get our strength and turn it into energy shield. And then also the one I have here has 40% increased lightning damage here, and then another 40% increased lightning damage over here as well. Let's go over the weapon swaps. So weapon 1, pretty much whatever nodes I can kind of get a spare pretty much. So these kind of increased lightning damage nodes here, over here, the Herald node over here as well, and then I guess some more of these lightning damage nodes. And then on the weapon set 2, I was trying around with like a lot of curse effect stuff, but then putting the Heroic Tragedy over here overwrites a lot of the curse effect nodes, so it was kind of bad. So I decided to go for shock effect, and that actually turned out to be the highest DPS so far. So basically coming over here to pick up some more magnitude of shock, some more magnitude of shock here, and then magnitude of shock here. And the nice thing is, since we are applying shocks with the staff on weapon set 2, and these shocks are having quite a big long duration, the highest value, or what do you call it, the highest shock, magnitude of shock is going to stay active even if we start shocking with our Boneshatter. So, right, so we can attack with the staff, get our bell down, and we'll get a big, like 80% shock on the target, and then we can swap over to the mace and finish them off. Alright, so let's go into PoB real quick, and so let's take a look at some of these stats. First of all, let's go over the config for the build. So we have 30 rage, we have our chill, a little bit of chill. I mean, it's not really, this isn't really doing that much, but yeah. Then we have our shock, 82% shock. Then we have our berserk rage effect. So we got our berserk rage effect because this isn't really being calculated properly. We have our unbound because this also isn't being calculated properly. We have our grim feast. I have this turned off, but you can just kind of see what it looks like when we have grim feast in maps pretty much. So you can see our max hit is about 9k on fizz and 32k on elemental, so more than enough. Even with this like scuffed evasion, I think this is like totally fine. Okay, so that is that. And then oh yeah, at one point I was trying to like figure out which Against the Darkness is good, and also the Against the Darkness is a little bit buggy because if I change the tree a little bit, you can see it's going to lose the benefits from the Against the Darkness. So what you have to kind of do is, wait, how do we get rid of this? We have to, I don't know, I think I found the best way to actually fix it is to just in the custom modifier just push enter, right? And then it kind of fixes it. So we have that. And then I guess we don't really need this part anymore, but I might leave it for testing. Okay, and then also the Megalomaniac, the stat wasn't really being calculated properly, so I've added it in here as well. Okay, so that is the config. Let's go over the sort of stats of the build. So since we are hitting 2 times, we do have to kind of set up our skill, our Boneshatter skill, to have count 2 because it hits 2 times, and include it in the full DPS. So we can see our full damage is about 1.4 million DPS. My character, like, I did buy some nice items, I'd say, and some kind of expensive items, but nowhere near the like cap of this build, because if you look at our stats, you know, only 500 intelligence, 550 intelligence, right? This can go to 1,000 intelligence, right? So potentially even like probably this will probably cap out at like maybe 3 to 4 million DPS, maybe a little bit more. So you can definitely get quite a bit more damage on here. Okay, so we went over our max hits over here, so pretty respectable, I'd say, good enough. I'm pretty much never dying in mapping just because of the mobility this build has, combined with like the freeze and then the just explosions and everything's just dying, right? And Uber bosses, T4 bosses, you know, you can see they were dying fast enough so where they can't really get many abilities off. So that's why I kind of think we don't really even need the acrobatics and the evade. Okay, so that is sort of the stats for the build. You can take a look at the PoB in Mobalitics and in the video description. The one in the video description might become outdated because I'm not going to update it. I'll update the one in Mobalitics. So make sure you check that out. But anyways, yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.